Oops. Howdy, strangers. Welcome to another edition of Talking to Strangers. I am the Alchemystic, your host, but you can call me B. Got another very special guest for you guys today. He's an interesting cat. He's a horror director and enthusiast. He is a nudist and an overall visionary. Welcome to the podcast, Tim Chimzar or Chismar, like Smizmar from Futurama, right? Chismar.
Chizmar, yeah. Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Absolutely, man. And we met last week on a table read for a movie that you've got coming up called Naked Alien Massacre. And it was a fun time, man. It was an entertaining little script. And so obviously you're a horror director. That's one of the things we know about you. And the theme of the movie was at a nudist colony, aliens massacring people at a nudist colony. Who can?
No, 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 no. Nudist colony is offensive to nudists. It's okay, you
Oh,
didn't know,
I
but
did not know.
colony. I know you did.
Sorry.
Colony is like the N word for nudists. It's very
Oh,
offensive. It
oh.
marginalizes and puts them in, that's like a term from the 50s or something, where you live away from society. So
Mm.
nowadays it's nudist, naturist, nudist resort, nudist park, but nobody says colony. Colony is offensive. And it's okay. A lot of people don't know.
There you go. We're starting off with a little teaching moment for me.
You
So,
said this was a safe space, and then I walk into
oh,
nothing but hate words.
oh
Hate
man,
words.
hate speech already off the bat. That's what are we like 30 seconds in? I'm already doing hate speech. So, Tim, I'd like to get to know more about you as the people will do too. So, the first question I always ask my guest is, what's your story, Tim?
My story is that I grew up in rough circumstances, and nobody gets to choose what family they're born into. So both my parents are convicted felons, and I grew up. My mother was on welfare, and she's mentally ill, and there was a lot of turmoil in my life. My family, nobody had ever graduated from the college, high school. Anyway, I made my way through, got my diploma, went to college, got my bachelor's degree, moved to California. I didn't know anybody in entertainment. I sold a screenplay. I got into stand up. I made movies. I made TV shows. I've worked consistently in the field. And now I have a three-bedroom condo in Vegas and I'm living my dream. I do what I want. I haven't had a day job since, I don't know, 2009 maybe. So I do what I love. I make money at it. I try to encourage and coach other people. I've made a lot of friends. I've made some enemies. That's how it is if you want to get something done. And I've worked in pro wrestling, in movies, and stand up, and horror. I am a nudist. I guess my story would be that I'm completely living my life by my own terms, and I've been successful doing it. I've referred to myself as a successful risk taker. That's who I am.
That's great to hear, man, because that's the type of people I want to have on this podcast. You don't fit into the mold that society likes to cast us into, this machine life of running on a hamster wheel and giving up on your dreams and just doing what you got to do to get by. And so I resonate with that journey as well because I'm an artist. I'm a pro wrestler. That was my chosen profession even though I had 4.0 GPA and above a 130 IQ. I decided to be a pro wrestler and kind of run on the fringes of society. So I vibe with you, man. It's really cool to talk to somebody that is going after their dream, that's achieving their dream, and not really giving a fuck what anybody thinks about their lifestyle. And I feel like there's something freeing and attractive about that. And I feel like more people need to kind of try to find that in their life. So you said you moved out to LA. What was the screenplay you sold, and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Pennsylvania between Erie and Pittsburgh, Cleveland and Buffalo. So I was in that area. And I moved to Rancho Cucamonga in 2005. I at my college, since you mentioned wrestling, I was a huge wrestling fan growing up, and I went to some indie shows when I was senior in high school, and I took it all in. I was looking at it, and I wasn't just like a fan. I looked at it like a business. I'm like, oh wow, so there's merchandise table, and you need the wrestlers, and okay, you got concessions, and you got sales and marketing. I see some advertising. Okay, you need the ring, and I was just doing this little checklist in my head where I was like, I could do this. I could do this. And so I met a guy who was a bodybuilder and he wanted to be a pro wrestler. And we became friends. And I told you, I came from dirt poor. I mean, no, you know, not just no phone, no car, but sometimes no food in the cupboards. Like, I mean, it was really rough. And this guy came from money and he was a bodybuilder. And so I made connections with the NWA tri-state at the time. It was West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio. It was Richard Arpin was the guy who was running it. And me and a few wannabe wrestler guys would go down to their shows. We would drive 5-6 hours to West Virginia, and ultimately, the guy that I introduced to him started wrestling for him. And he ultimately won the, what they call it, NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship, which they retired when the X Division started because it was associated with the NWA in the beginning. It was NWA TNA before it became TNA. Anyway, he bought a ring. We started doing live wrestling shows. We dealt with license, permit, insurance, all that stuff. And I was the guy, I was the booker, I was the promoter, I would get the advertising, I would do all this kind of stuff. And my buddy just wanted to be the champion. So he was always, coming out doing his Lex Luger thing, like, oh, look how big I am. I'm always the champion. Yeah, yeah, whatever. And so he did that. And he cared about his thing. And I put everything else together. And I dealt with sponsorship, travel, hotels. I would book the occasional celebrity wrestler to come in. And anyway, while I was in college, we did consistent wrestling shows for my entire college career. So, 4 years. And I also had a pro wrestling radio show, which started off with an hour, and I had to fight for that, and then went to 2 hours. Then it was 3 hours my last year, and I was the general manager of the radio station, so I took it over completely. Then I was writing a column about wrestling for the newspaper in the town, the small town, and I had a television show. So at my indie wrestling shows, we would record the matches, and then we would do commentary over it, and I would splice things together, and I would use cameos from the more well-known wrestlers we got, Tony Atlas, etc. And so I had a TV show, I had a radio show, and I had a newspaper article all promoting my live shows. And this is what I did for 4 years while I was a full-time student, and I was a model for art classes, and I was working in daycare. And there you go. So when I graduated, my family didn't it was weird. When I graduated, nobody could tell me where to go or what to do because nobody had ever had a bachelor's degree. Nobody had ever done anything. So I had some friends that I went to school with who had moved to California, and I put together $1,000, which is a lot of money for me at the time. And then I flew to California and I lived with them. And they got me a job working in real estate, and I worked to get my first car. And I was the guy who said, I wanted to have that Matt Damon, Ben Affleck thing. I wanted us all to work together and have success together and be that team and support each other. And I learned some things the hard way that, best laid plans, right? The one guy got a bunch of girls pregnant and ran away. The other guy allowed his dad to break his heart about Hollywood. His dad didn't believe he could be successful. And ultimately he agreed with his dad. I watched his, and I can get into it. I've told this at length in other talks and stuff, but he broke his spirit basically. And so I was the guy who was left. And but you asked about the script. It was called Checkered Flags, a comedy about race. It was about a black guy who goes into NASCAR. This was before Talladega Nights was a thing. And so we were going with the perspective of a bunch of rich white owners. And then here's this black guy who's more from the criminal element of like stealing cars, that sort of thing. So the owners of this one NASCAR team, they see a car jacking on the news, and so this guy's like zipping in and out of traffic with his stolen car, and they say we need him, and so they bail him out of jail if he's the race driver. So anyway, we needed either Chris Tucker or Chris Rock or some famous celebrity black comedian to be attached to the project in order for it to pop. And the only one that we had any sort of connection to was Eddie Griffin, who played Undercover Brother and stuff like that. He was headlining the Ontario Improv, which was near me in Rancho Cucamonga. So I went to the Improv. I had a sign on one side. It said, "Hey, Eddie." On the other side, it said, "Screenplay for you." And I held it up, and he got out of his limo with his people. He walked over and he said, "What do you got?" And so one thing led to another. We attached him to it, and I optioned it, and that was the first screenplay I ever optioned. So after my friends left, I went into stand-up comedy because I was disgusted with partnerships kind of devolving, and I wanted something that I could just rely on myself for, and stand-up was that. So I went into stand-up, and then from there it was more projects.
Now, is there somewhere that people can watch Checkered Flags?
No, it never got made. It was just optioned.
Okay. Bummer. That sounds like a great movie. It might
Yeah.
not get made these days because it'd be seen as racist to have the black guy stealing the car, and you might run into some problems getting it made even now. But it sounds like a funny concept. So
Yeah, and like I said, it was before Talladega Nights. So it was a little yeah, I mean, it was a little before its time on some of that stuff. And I mean, I had this argument at you mentioned the table reading for Naked Alien Massacre. I mean, there was some of the stuff I had to deal with at the end of this where they were talking about language in the script or representation of this person or that person. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of that stuff, it's about how you do it. If you remember, I asked Adrian, I was like, well, have you ever watched Pulp Fiction? How many times does Quentin say the N word? Are you saying Pulp Fiction wouldn't get made today? And she was like, "Oh no, no," and then she said, "But he made up for it with Django Unchained." Look, I don't know. At the end of the, you can't make everybody happy, you know. That's the thing. But I don't know. I think it does have something to do with how you approach something, you know.
yeah, they say a surefire way to fail is to try to please everybody. So,
Sure.
especially with the genre like campy horror, you kind of got to allow a little bit of leeway when it comes to those types of stories. Like it's just for fun anyway, right? Like you're not trying to win an Oscar, you're just trying to make some fun art and that people will laugh or get scared at, or it's not that serious, bro. It's not that serious. So, um you're working on Naked Alien Massacre. How far along are you with the project?
Well, we're dealing with funding right now, so locations and funding. I'm hoping to shoot around. We were talking. So originally, I was talking September. One place is saying November. I think it's getting too dark. I'm gonna hit the light.
Go for it. Yeah.
I feel like I'm disappearing on you.
You're turning into a ghost.
I'll stick
Ah,
my head in front of the. There
let
you go.
there
So you
be
don't.
light.
There we go.
Yeah,
Let's see if this is.
I think I'm gonna close my blinds to get some more of this unnatural light. There we go.
Need to get one of those ring cams, one of those or whatever they call it, the little circle ring thing. Put that on
Yeah.
my desk.
Yeah, everyone's got those ring cams. It always makes like a weird like circle light on their eyes or their glasses or something. It always like is kind of off-putting to me. That's why I don't have one. So you said you're getting funding. I know you had talked about at the read that you already have a location.
That's better. Well, yeah, it's more complicated than that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, sorry, nothing's ever simple. So we have three locations that have been pledged, and we're dealing with that right now. So one's a resort in near San Francisco. Another one is a community living space in Texas, and then we have a pretty wealthy resort in Florida, in Kissimmee, Florida. So those are the three that we're in negotiations with right now that are the easiest, but there's a lot of moving parts to make something happen.
Yeah, it's I've had some projects die, and it's just one of those things in Hollywood where like Checker Flags, right? You had an option, you're thinking, "Oh man, we're going with this thing. It's gonna happen. My Hollywood dream's gonna come true," and then it's just the option never gets picked up. The time frame goes, past the contract, and then it's just nothing ever happens with it. And so this is one of the natures of the beast. So let's talk about the projects that you have done and where people can find them. I'm going to put any kind of relevant stuff down in the description for people to find your work so they could check it out. But why don't you just give the people a little rundown of what you got out there?
Almost like we have to pick a pick a topic and then start talking about it. Like if we were talking about books, I have something like 13 books out. I have short stories in collections. I have full novels. I do comic books. Here's one of my novels, Soul Trader. That's me. That's me. So I ran the Horror Writers Association for 2 years in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas chapter. I was a member in LA. As far as movies, if that's what but
I mean, just in
I've done
general, anything really that you want to promote or get people's attention on. It sounds like you're a really prolific creator. So,
yeah.
uh,
Yes, and I'm not bragging. I like to stay busy, so I'm always constantly. I have multiple things happening at the same time because I never know what's going to go, what's going to drop off, what may go in a few years. What's I would like to promote that some of the fun stuff they can see right now. My movie Hell's Coming for You is a action movie about a disabled bounty hunter, and it is on Amazon, Tubi, Google Play, etc., etc. And I'm in it. I produced it. I co-wrote it, and we shot it in Las Vegas. It has a pretty big budget, and it has a couple of pro wrestlers in it. Al Burke is in it. He plays a cop. Sin Bodhi is in it. He plays one of the bad guys. And Super Beast, Chris. I think you know Chris Cody.
oh yeah, I know Karate.
Okay, so he's in it as well. And there's a bunch of wrestlers in the third act. There's a lot of goons who come in and get beat up. There's a girl, Jessamine something or other. She's a big tough kidnapping woman in the movie. Anyway, it's called Hell's Coming for You. Go check it out. Give us an Amazon review. That'd be great. My movie, The Nudels of Nudeland, which is a nudist comedy, and the nudist talent show, Naked and Not Afraid. Both of that is on Troma Now and Go Movies. But the easiest way is go to nudisthumorist.com. That's nudisthumorist.com. And you can see all my content and videos and interviews and projects. And I'm a big proponent in the clothing optional world. So I even do projects for clothesfree.com, which is a nudist news website. So we do interviews and events live on location, nude marathons, nude runs, nude resorts, nude hot springs, nude hiking, nude skydiving, you name it, I got it. So there's those things. I've got some comics out, Evil Pie and Golden Tiki, all kinds of stuff, brother. All kinds of stuff.
That's really rad, man. Like it's inspiring. I'm kind of in this creator mode myself where I feel like I'm holding this lightning bolt. Like just today, I made a clock with my art. I've been just going all out. I made a fucking coloring book, right, with my art, a coloring book of my art. Like it has like an example of my art, and then you could color it however you want. I got a fucking tarot card deck that I
Yeah.
made. I got a bunch of t-shirts on my website at Alchemystic Apparel. So I vibe with you, man. I'm trying to just hit all cylinders of art and kind of incorporate it into this new wrestling character that I want to do. That is a mystic weirdo. And I just have all these paintings and yeah. So it's awesome. It's awesome to talk to a fellow creative who kind of gets you. Like that's kind of my big thing is I'm stuck over here in Orange County away from all the creatives in LA, and I have these people around me who are all like 9 to 5ers and they don't really understand the creator journey where it's like I've got no guaranteed money, right? Like there's no like I don't have like a clock in and clock out and then make a check. Like I'm just hustling any way I can and all these different avenues to make money. You know, I got a couple screenplays out there floating around. So it's just I'm on the same boat. You're a little farther ahead having an actual house though. I'm in an apartment. So it's cool to talk to somebody like you, man, and really like show people that you can chase your dream and you can make a living out of it. And don't and then like your buddy whose dad broke him on Hollywood and made it and convinced him he wasn't good enough. Like your mind will convince you that you're not good enough a lot of the times. We're always facing doubts and fears and oh no, what if it doesn't work out? And I think a lot of people never get started because of those fears, or they have someone like that guy's dad who's constantly like, well, why don't you get a real job, you bum, you know? And it's like, motherfucker, I'm trying to create something. That's the only way off this hamster wheel is you have to create something. And obviously you're proof positive that when you follow your heart and you create from your heart and follow what your path is telling you to go, like that good things can happen and you can be successful. And so I commend you, my friend. I commend you for all of your work, all the different cool shit you're doing. And like I said, guys, all the relevant stuff, anything you want to check out from Tim, his comic books, his novels, his movies. I'm gonna have links to his stuff so you go check out all of his work and get inspired to do it yourself. So let's segue. I got to know about the nudist stuff, Tim. Because it's
Yeah.
obviously it's something that people see maybe as fringe. Obviously, I didn't know about the whole colony thing. I didn't know if that was like a derogatory term at this point. So I apologize for that. But just enlighten me a little bit. How did you get into the whole culture and the lifestyle? And what's it like in the typical day at a nudist resort?
Yeah, well, like a lot of my fellow nudists, for me, it's very natural. There was no conversion. There was simply realizing that there were more people who thought like I did. So, first time I ever heard about nudism, I was a little kid. I was watching Unsolved Mysteries. There was an episode where somebody was hiding out at a nudist park. And so they did like reenactments of it and strategically placed so you didn't see anything that you couldn't see on broadcast television in the United States. But they gave the allure of it. And then so like they went and knocked on it was like kids that in the foreground you saw like their heads run by, but you didn't see naked kids and stuff. And so when this woman was talking, you saw her from like above her boobs up. So it implied that she was nude. Anyway, the point is, I watched this and I said, what? There's a place like that? And immediately I thought, of course, why wouldn't there be? And then I started thinking, why don't we have this in my town? So that was the first check on that. And then it wasn't until I went to college and I was an art major and I would have people pose nude for my art classes to draw them with the class. And it was just accepted and normal. And as soon as I had somebody pose nude for my art class, I knew that I had to pose nude for art classes. I had to. There was no negotiating. This was a bucket list thing. I needed to do it. I had to have that experience. So I went and I applied and talked to the professor and got the job. And I was one of the nude models who would come and get naked for an art class. So I did private sessions, I did classes, I did on the weekends. And I got known somewhat as the naked guy on campus. So there would be people that I associated with or friends of friends, and I would go to their dorm room and they'd have, a charcoal picture of me on the wall. I'm like, hey, that's me. And this was neat. I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed or shy or anything. For me, it was the other people were way more nervous and uncomfortable or whatever than I was. For me, it was natural and normal. I started getting into nude artwork. I started looking into people like Spencer Tunick, the photographer, who would get large groups of nude bodies together. And ultimately, I went to my first nudist resort, which was Whitethorn Lodge, which was below Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went down there. I experienced it for the day, talking to like-minded people. I came back and I was just more affirmed that I was right in my thinking and that the culture was wrong. A lot of times when I talk about nudism and nude rights and whatnot, it's kind of like being like a gay guy in the 50s. You know, it was demonizing of other. It's those gay people, those people. And it's completely different when it's your brother, your neighbor, your sister, the doctor, your dentist, your mailman. There's lots of interesting, clever, creative people that you run into at nudist events, nude resorts, nude, all that, but people don't talk about it. They keep it quiet. And there's this cultural shaming for it unless it's permitted on these special events and protests or whatever. So we're constantly dealing with that. I'm a lifetime ANNR, that's American Association for Nude Recreation. I'm a lifetime TNS, that's the Naturist Society. I'm a lifetime clothesfree.com. I'm a member of SCNA, the Southern California Naturist Association. I work for Clothes Free, as you know, and I make nude content. So when I moved to California, one of the first things I did when I landed was look for resorts, look for nude beaches, look for these clubs and events. And immediately I was so happy. That was, I have my love-hate relationship with California, but the love side is the nudism. from where I landed in Rancho Cucamonga, when I got there in 2005, there was Deer Park, there was Olive Dell, there was Glen Eden, there was De Anza, there was Bates Beach, there was San Onofre, there was Black's Beach in San Diego. I mean, I could go on and on. And these are just the landed. Then there's non-landed groups where people do nude events like bowling and et cetera, body painting, whatever. So for me, it was great. I plugged right into this culture, and I mean, I literally joined like nude dating sites, and I was dating women who thought the way that I did. That wasn't like, oh, this is weird and perverted, or no, they got it. They get it. A lot of the nudists I connected with grew up in nude families. They were, naked kids, and their parents, like this whole generational nudist lifestyle and understanding. And it was great. It was wonderful. And so that's always been a part of me. And sometimes I've been more open with it, and sometimes I've been more hidden with it. I played the Hollywood game for a long time, and I got burned. There was, it hasn't all been uphill for me. It was maintaining. And then around 2016, I had a nervous breakdown, and I hit severe depression. I hit rock bottom, and I left Hollywood and I went to the mountains of Idaho for a year. I wrote books. That's where I wrote 3 of my books. I got a job working with kids who had behavioral issues, and I spent a year like thinking about, do I want to work in entertainment? Do I even want to do this kind of stuff? Because it takes its toll on you. It really it can beat you up. It can really anyway. Ultimately, I decided that I'm an entertainment guy, so that's why I landed in Las Vegas, because I always tell people I'm close enough to the fire, but I don't get burned. I can feel the warmth when I'm in Vegas. I can do the meetings. I can go back and forth. I can put together projects. I can be free enough to do my thing. But when I lived in LA, I became the kind of people I hated when I first got there. Everything was about schmoozing and networking and parties and red carpets, and it was just very fake and phony. And I really didn't like it in the long run. So
Yeah, the great part about California, like you said, like if you have a lifestyle, you can find a place where you're accepted, right? Like, but it's still kind of weird to me that that you did kind of get ostracized a little bit for your lifestyle in an industry where they're supposed to be very open-minded, right?
no,
And
they're open minded if you think the way they think.
yeah, that's a weird thing about these folks that purport to be open-minded is like my type of open-minded, right? That's so yeah, it's Vegas seems like the perfect place though, right? I'm sure you've received more than enough acceptance in that town for your lifestyle.
Oh, no, I don't think so. It's not a great town for nudism, because it's so sex oriented. So here, if you're naked, it's strippers and porn and swinger clubs. So no, absolutely not.
Huh.
This is not a great place for nudism. As a matter of fact, there's a place that calls himself the Las Vegas Naturists. It's down the road. Yeah, it's a swinger couples club. It's not naturist. It's absolutely not. So no, as far as naturism goes, I leave here and I go to events, I go to gatherings, I go to nude cruises and nude marathons and things like that. So but you got to kind of, you weigh the good and the bad with everything. But I've talked to some people about moving to Texas. I have a friend of mine who has he's a nudist pastor, actually. He runs a nudist ministry, and they do naked weddings, they do naked Bible studies, they do all these events, and he has acres of property and a pond, and they grow their own food, and they have livestock. And I've really been given a lot of thought to the whole intentional living community, where you just join in with a bunch of people. And what a great way to buck off the chains of society.
Yeah, I guess that shows how much I know. I would think that Vegas would be the spot, but like you said, the sexualization, right? And that's not what nudism is about. It's not about sexualizing the human body. It's a natural thing, and that probably is where a lot of the stigma comes from, because they're like, oh, there's naked little kids, and people sexualize the naked little kids and think, oh, because they're naked, there's some kind of weird sex shit going on. But it's like, no, there's just natural. This is just our natural form, right? Like that's how we were born in this world naked. We weren't born in this world with clothes on. Right.
Yeah.
So people, I don't think people can get over that hurdle in their mind where like sex and nudity and sex always goes hand in hand. But it's like, no, And that's because of this repression that we've had about our bodies, where like the only people that ever see us naked are the people we have sex with. So there's this association of the two things.
Yeah.
So I kind of get it now, it's kind of clicked that, oh yeah, okay, Vegas is Sin City, but like
Yeah.
nudism is not about being freely sexual or having orgies. And I think maybe, is that like the most common misconception about nudism?
Yeah, there's a lot of hack lines and hack questions that we get. Another one is, why is it always the people you don't want to see naked that get naked? And again, we're not exhibitionists. We're not doing it for you. And there's some attractive and there's some not as attractive. It runs a spectrum, but because it's real people. It's not models. It's not. It's just people. It's normalizing nudity. Nobody says, "Oh, look, a naked cat. Oh, look, a naked dog." It's just a cat and a dog. So we naturally are born naked. The catchphrase is, if God wanted us to be born naked, if God wanted us to be naked, we would have been born that way, right? So it's as natural as you could possibly be. It's a human without any added, you know, extras on it. So it's very accepting. It's very it's very freeing, and it's a wonderful environment when you're around people who get it, who understand it, who are on board with what we're doing and what we're thinking. There's a couple of I've done some videos for Jubilee on YouTube, and they have over 1 million views. If you look up Jubilee Spectrum Nudists, you'll get both of them. The clips on there are censored, and then there's the uncensored link in the description, so you can see it fully nude. But I've been on 2 of those where they had us talk about nudism. So they brought one episode, they brought 6 nudists together, and then they posed questions to try to get us debating and arguing and discussing. And so it's really emotional. It's good. You get to hear not from me, not just from me, but from people of different ages and races and sexes, and they're all talking about their perspective and why they see body positive, healthy nudism for what it is. And then they invited me back to answer questions that textiles, which is what we call you clothed people, the textiles might have about nudism. And so we were on the other side of a wall, and they wanted people to come in and ask me questions, and I would answer it about nudism. And I told them that I didn't like that because I'm a white, fat, straight male. And so I really felt we needed to shake it up diversity wise. At the bare minimum, let me have a woman with me. So they agreed, and I got my good friend Juliana Acosta, who was the co-star of the Nudels of Nudeland movie with me, and she's a Latina, and she was there with. I wasn't going to be answering questions about women having their period or top freedom rights or things like that, because nowadays everything's identity politics, right? They'd be like, he's a white man. What does he know about this? So I'd rather have her be able to. So the 2 of us answered all these questions about nudism, and it was a hoot. It has a ton of viewers on it. So.
Right on, man. Yeah, it's weird that in this day and age, we're in 2024, and we are in this inclusive time where we have open minds, but there's still this like stigma in this country about nudism. And like, you don't get that stigma in Europe, right? Like Europe, the body is, look at all the European art. That's where all this Renaissance art of nude art comes from. There's all these nude beaches. People aren't so prudish about their bodies. And what do you think that is about the United States culture that has us that way? Because we're supposed to be this land of the free and open-minded and accepting, but then there's this like, the naked body. Oh no, a penis. Oh no, a vagina, boobs. Like, what is it about our country that has made this repression?
Well, it's twofold, because on the one hand, while you're saying they're anti the nude body, and they sexualize it, they also glorify violence. That's the thing that we are completely desensitized to. When you go to other countries, when you watch the television in Norway, you see nude people on commercials. A woman gets out of the shower and talks about toothpaste because it's just a body. What's the big deal? But you know what they don't have? People slitting their throat on TV, which we have with The Walking Dead, things like that. Like our attitudes towards violence. Oh yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. When that should be unnatural. That's the thing. You don't see that out when you walk out your door. People shooting each other and killing each other and stabbing each other and setting each other on fire and torture and all this. But the human body should be tolerated. At the very least, I should be able to go out and check my mail naked if I want to, and people go, "Oh, that's Tim." It shouldn't be this aghast it's so dumb. I could, obviously this is my soapbox and I could break it down a million different ways, but are you telling me if I put a tiny thong on that hides my cock, suddenly my bare ass and my whole bulbous body is suddenly decent? That's okay? That's okay? I mean, it's as dumb as the whole top freedom stuff that a man can be topless and a woman can't. So a woman who is a flat-chested woman and me, who's probably a freaking C cup, I can be topless with my man boobs out, and she has to put a shirt on to hide her nipples on a flat chest. And then what about trans rights now? So when a woman decides that she's transitioning to be a man and she has top surgery, now they post all these pictures of top surgery. She still has a vagina. She still has a vagina. She is still a biological woman, but now she's a man, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And it just highlights how stupid this stuff is. I hope that society will grow and change and get there. But I don't know. I mean, one of the things that blows my mind is, you're in Southern California. In LA, there is a thing called the World Naked Bike Ride. Every year, there are hundreds of nude bikers on bicycles that ride their bikes through the city. I've done it. I've participated. I've been there. I've been on bikes. I've been in the cars. I've been taking photography and pictures and video and interviewing people. Years this has been going on. It has a police escort. It has a police permit. We have food trucks. We have music. We have a naked party all day with 2 bike rides through the city. It doesn't even make the news.
Yeah, that's crazy. But you'll be sure to hear all the bad shit that's going on. I'll have to tell you that much. That's a whole other conversation. But listen, Tim, we're almost done with part 1. Are you cool to do part 2? I feel like we got a lot left to talk about.
We've been talking for 40 minutes.
Well, we had a little bit of pre-chat, about 5 minutes. Probably been about 35 though. I told you it goes fast, brother.
All right.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back with part 2 with Tim. And we are back with Tim. Tim, told you it's one of my running gimmicks right now with this new tarot deck that I made, my own design of tarot cards with my artwork. You see the little Alchemystic Productions logo on the back. All original artwork on this tarot deck. So I want you to think of a question. It could be love related, it could be work related, it could just be general life question. What do you want the tarot to tell you? So think about it for a second while I'm shuffling. Let's get the energy going. What do we have for Tim? Oh, we already got one. Wow, that was quick. All right. We've got the King of Swords. Ooh, King of Swords. All right. So before we get the meaning, what was your question?
It was about my movie. It was about hoping for good news, funding, location, do we shoot this year, etc.
All right. So let's go to Google and get Google's assessment.
Google, you got to go to Google. I have a deck of inverse tarot cards, and it comes with a little book so you can flip through.
Yeah, I got the little books. I kind of have this go-to. It's just a quick little meaning on Google, and the King of Swords upright is mental clarity, intellectual power, authority, and truth. Yeah. So sounds like good news for you, buddy. King of Swords is very powerful. I watch a lot of tarot. I'm trying to get into reading it. So I watch a lot of different readers and just see different styles. I do have one in particular. Naked by the Moon is their name on TikTok. Brigitta Voros on Instagram. She's fucking great. Just really, really good with the symbolism and just bringing meanings out and getting people like specific. They're general readings, but she does really long readings. Does like hour-long readings that are very tailored to a specific collective of people. So it's kind of like getting a personal reading without getting a personal reading. And she's really awesome. But anyway, so yeah, I've kind of just been getting into tarot. I've kind of always been into the symbolism and the storytelling behind it. Because every different card represents a different step in the journey, a different experience, a different archetype or personality. So there's a storytelling element that goes along with the journey of the tarot. So it's something that I really resonate with, and I'm trying to get into it. I made my own deck out of it. So anyway, let's get on to wrestling because we both are really big on wrestling. Speaking of storytelling, um, pro wrestling is something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. So let me start off with a question. Who,
Wait. Let me say something about
go,
your card, your,
oh,
your
go for it.
card deck.
Yeah, yeah.
So, my movie, The Noodles of Nudeland, there's a nudist card game overseas in England, and it's called Sunburnt. So it's kind of like Old Maid, in that you play it and you match them up and you put them down, and there's so it could be like nude people walking a dog, or nude people, playing a game or whatever. Anyway, you don't want to end up with the sunburnt couple, and it's the person who does, you lose. You're burnt. So anyway, I actually became a sponsor of their game with my movie, The Noodles of Nudeland, and so there are decks of this card game that have my movie on it, like the name of it and stuff. So
Oh, that's
um,
awesome.
I could have grabbed it and showed you a couple of the images. So I still could. I mean, that's a thing that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna get to a part three, brother, because I think we could do a whole 40 minutes just on wrestling. I actually might need to talk to you if you know any like game creators or anything. I have a board game that I created that it's called Kundalini the board game. Here, it's based on this painting that I did.
Uh-huh.
Um, I started painting. I wanted to do something with the chakras, right? And the tree of life, incorporate both, and you can't really see it because of the glare. But let's see. So it's like the Kundalini snakes on the outside here with the chakras in the middle and the tree of life and the pyramid. So I was making it and I was like, this looks like a board game. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna write some rules for this board game.
Mhm.
So yeah, I have fucking board games. If you know anybody who wants to make a board game about the Kundalini,
That's what I was going to say, because you asked one question and then you followed up with another question. The answer to the first question is yes. I have friends who have made board games. They came out in Spencer's, etc. But unfortunately, they don't have good stories. They have stories of having it not sold very well, and then the people are angry that they took a chance on it and whatever. So
I just
sadly,
want
I
someone
don't
to give
really.
me a check. Just somebody give me a fucking check and like invest in it. And if it doesn't do well, at least I got my money out of it. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but
Their game was called Pukes and Staggers. It was a parody of Shoots and Ladders. Uh, is it that Shoots and Ladders, right?
yeah,
Shoots.
yeah,
Oh, it
shoots
must be
and
like
ladders,
rock
shoots
shoot.
and
Okay,
ladders.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of wrestling. I'm like, wait, this doesn't sound right. But yeah, Pukes and Staggers. It was a drinking game, and it was supposed to like play on like you get drunk while you're playing it, and puke and stagger and whatever. So
That
so
sounds
yeah,
like something at Spencer's. It sounds like something you'd find at Spencer's Gifts.
yeah. But yeah, no, I want to talk wrestling with you. That sounds good. I ran the independent wrestling promotion. I created a pro wrestling stand-up comedy tour that had Rob Van Dam and Booker T and all these other guys, and it was a TV show with the Country Music Channel. And I'm good. But I've been on Jericho's podcast 3 times. RVD lives down the road. He's one of my closest buddies. Like, yeah, we're very wrestling oriented. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. You're connected in the business. That's good to hear. I want to ask you favorite wrestler, favorite match.
Okay. I'll go with the first thing that pops into my head, because this could change all the time. But right now, my favorite wrestler, not my favorite human being, my favorite wrestler is Mick Foley. So his time as Cactus Jack and all his incarnations and kind of breaking some barriers. I'm a big fan of Mick Foley and as a wrestler. And when I think of my favorite match off the top of my head right now, it would be Royal Rumble 2000, him and Triple H, the one that he thought was going to be his final match. And then they kept asking him to come back. And then as the years went on, he decided to do that thing with Edge at the at WrestleMania with the fiery table, et cetera, et cetera. But at the time, I just thought it was fantastic. And as a young kid wannabe wrestler, I used to watch that and slow it down and practice with my guys. I wrestled a little bit. I've been in some battle royals. I've done some wrestling here and there. I'm way better as an announcer, and then obviously a booker and promoter and a talking head and all that. But yeah, man, Mick Foley and him versus Triple H, Royal Rumble 2000, off the top of my head.
Was that the one where they use like tacks and stuff? Where there's like a tables involved, obviously, and I'm pretty sure I remember that match.
Okay. Well,
I-
what it was he had only been um Mick. He had been he had been Mankind. He had been Dude Love, and building up to this final encounter with Triple H, he tore off his shirt and was, Cactus Jack. And
That's
so
right. Yeah.
Triple H acted like, oh my God. And he said in interviews since, like, thank God Triple H sold it, because if he didn't, if he'd been like, it's the same stupid guy but in a different shirt, it would all went to hell. But because of that, it was fantastic. It was really great. There was a lot of little things in the match. It was in my opinion what a hardcore match should be. It shouldn't start off with kendo sticks and garbage cans. It should be a wrestling match, and then they add things to it as it's going on. And so, yeah, they there was handcuffs, and the year prior they had that incident where The Rock kept bashing him over the head with the chairs that ended up
I
being
was
on the
there.
mat. So,
I was front row for that. I actually ended up in Beyond the Mat in crowd shots, like next to, because I was sitting like a couple rows in front of Mick Foley's wife, and I was sitting next to The Rock's wife, Danny, well, at the time, Danny
yeah.
Garcia, I think is her name. So I was like front row. I got in the Royal Rumble, flipping off Stone Cold when he comes out. So if you guys watch Royal Rumble '99, Stone Cold comes out for the Rumble. He's flipping off the audience, and then there's this little kid flipping him off back. I was probably like 16 or something at the time, flipping them off back. And then I look forward and I see the cameras on me, and you see this like me freeze. So I'm flipping off Stone Cold with a big smile. And then I look down and see the camera, and
Yeah.
you see me like kind of stiffen up, like, oh shit, I'm on camera. And then it flips back to
Right.
Stone Cold. And then I got on Beyond the Mat. Anyway, I diverted the conversation there. But yeah, I remember that because I was there.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And it was just really magical. In particular the kick out. He kicked out of a pedigree, and then it took Triple H giving him a second pedigree on the thumbtacks. And all he needed was that one kick out that really got everybody all excited, and then he could lose. But I mean, it was magical. It was a really great send off. It was a great way to go out. And then Triple H or Stone Cold was out. So they ended up having him come back the next month for another Hell in a Cell, where they rigged the stuff to do some of the things that happened in the Undertaker match, but this time more protected. And then they invited him. They had him come back for that McMahon in every corner WrestleMania. So he was one of the four in the main event of WrestleMania. So, but his plan was to leave. So I love what he did with the books and with the story of the unlikely guy I mean, you go back to his early, when he got his jaw broken by Dynamite Kid. I mean, to see him go from a wannabe and a jobber to go through the whole history, and he put his body on the line. There's a lot to respect about Mick.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the great things about Mick is like people, looked at his hardcore, stuff with Terry Funks in Japan and the death matches and bleeding a lot and tax and all this stuff, and it kind of spawned this whole death match culture, this whole death match genre. But what I always loved about Mick is he told a story with it, and like you said, like a proper hardcore match should be escalated, right? It shouldn't start off like one of the things I don't like about death matches is like they're already to the light tubes like 2 minutes in, and it's like, but build to it, right? If you're gonna do this really violent, like risky, like dangerous style, at least tell a story. And the best death matches, my favorite death match was between my friend Tito Escondido, who's Bad Dude Tito, and Rico Dynamite at LCW. And it's just an indie match. Nobody's probably hardly anybody's seen it, right? But they told a story, and they had this whole like tag team breakup thing that they did, and they told this amazing story, and all their spots meant something, right? All their big fucking wows meant something, and that's how, like, if you're gonna do death matches, at least escalate it, right? Like have a good little story to it. And Mick always did that with his matches. And then like the character work too, right? There's nobody else that's had three distinct different characters that they did, and then each one had kind of a little bit different style and a different swagger, and it kind of showed you what character work is, because people don't really understand like how much really goes into pro wrestling. Like you talked about the business side earlier, like if you're a pro wrestler on the indies, like you have to be your own business. Like you have to know how to market yourself. You have to make your own merchandise. You have to get your own bookings. Like nobody's out there promoting you. There's no territories anymore that are going to be like, we're going to promote you for 6 months, kid. Here's a contract. Like, you have to get around and you have to network. You have to be able to sell yourself to promoters and to fans. And there's this whole thing that goes into it that I learned from the business that, like, I talked about earlier how, I went into pro wrestling when I probably had the chops to do a lot of other things, but it's like people like my mom don't really understand like how much I've really learned from this business. And there's so many different facets that go into it, and that's why I love it so much, because it's the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's also like on top of the hard, it challenges you to do all these different things. You have to be smart. You can't be dumb and do this stuff. You have to be able to tell a story, have a character that resonates with fans, and just the business stuff I just talked about. Like it all has to go into one package, because that's what you are. You're your own business. So anyway, that's my little tirade about how awesome pro wrestling is, and how much people don't really appreciate like what our art form really is. It's very all encompassing in the arts. Like I learned a lot of stuff about live TV production from doing live shows, and making the moves go to the right cameras, and making facials at the other cameras, while like, it's just like you have to have all these things while performing in front of the fans with one take. You got one take to do it all right. So I kind of, it's like being in LA in the entertainment industry, they don't really appreciate it. I mean, now it's kind of getting to where, The Rock and John Cena and Batista are now becoming Hollywood stars. So Hollywood is, I think, warming to wrestling again. But I remember we were talking to Freddie Prinze Jr. about Wrestling Pro Wrestling, which is Brian Kendrick's show. We were trying to do some things with it, and he's like, the networks hate wrestling. They absolutely hate it. They don't like the people that watch it. They don't. It's really hard sell to the networks, and because in entertainment, like I'm sure being a horror director, like there's this hierarchy, right? Where like the higher you are on the hierarchy, the more you look down at these other, like a drama actor or something might look down at the stuff that you do. It's just hacky, or you know what I mean? Like there's this weird hierarchy in Hollywood of towards entertainment, and wrestling's like right below or above a mime. They don't respect what we do, but I've learned a fucking shit ton from this business. And so let's kick it to you for some questions. Yeah, you said you got some questions for me about pro wrestling. What do you got for me, bud?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask you about your character, because you were talking about it earlier and you mentioned a bear and stuff like this. So you were a Russian, and you had what, a stuffed animal you brought to the ring?
No, so my character was Sasha Derevko. I was a Russian, like a lot like the old 80s Soviet gimmicks, like playing off the whole Rocky Four and the Cold War heat on the Russians, the whole hammer and sickle Russian. Oh, they're like back then. There's the America's greatest enemy was Russia. So I did this character as kind of like a throwback, because I really liked those old character, like cartoony type character wrestling that I grew up with. I wanted to do that. That was the art that I was doing at the time, was just old timey heel, and it was easy heat. And so my story of my character was I trained with a bear, right? Like, as in Russia, they have these Russian circus bears, and they do all these tricks. Or they have Russians that wrestle bears, right? In the circus, the old circus, that used to be one of the little attractions, was, oh, this guy's gonna wrestle a bear. So I had this idea that in my backstory, that my character actually trained with a bear. So I have it's on my here. I'll bring up my figure here. My on my figure, Grant, who's a friend of yours and mine. He was episode 3 of this season. You can see it on YouTube, but he made this character for me. If you look real close, that T-shirt is a
Uh-huh.
bear riding a unicycle. which is I have an actual T-shirt. That was one of the actual T-shirts I was selling for merchandise. I found this picture of a bear riding
Yeah.
a unicycle, and then I stylized it like the old Obama like campaign poster of hope,
Right.
right? So
Sure,
they
sure.
had, yeah, I put it through a stylizer, made this fucking bear picture, and then I put it on a T-shirt. It actually sold pretty fucking good because it doesn't look like a wrestling T-shirt. It's just this stupid, wacky fucking bear on a unicycle, and Grant made it as a T-shirt for my little figure. So that was the
That's
backstory of Sasha Derevko, as I trained with a bear.
interesting. I have a couple of figures of my own. I also have title belts all over this condo, by the way. But I had this made of me. Uh,
That's awesome. I lost your sound. I don't know if you hit the off button on the mic.
no, can you hear me?
Oh, God, oh, there we go. I didn't hear you for a second, but so that's you right there. That's Tim.
Yeah, man, this is me. And I had this made from a guy who was doing these figures years ago. And I got them made for a lot of the people. I was working on a comedy called The Year of Laughing Dangerously, and I got them as a gift for here in Southern California. Did you do anything? Did you ever do anything with Maverick Pro Wrestling?
I didn't, but I have heard of them.
All right. Well, Killer Cross, Kevin Cross, he's their champion. Anyway, my buddy ran the promotion. I got him a figure of Brandon Ficarra was the guy's name, and the director and some of the other people associated. Also, Sin Bodhi. Do you ever come up to Vegas for Cauliflower Alley Club, by the way?
I came to Cauliflower Alley one time. It was probably about 8 years ago that I was out there. So it's a good time. I really enjoyed it. It's cool to be around. It's just like our own little, like, because wrestling's a big time niche, but it's like it's just this like brotherhood of people that are just trying to keep the love of wrestling alive and amongst the boys. It's just this like fraternity of old wrestlers and new wrestlers, and just a place we can all get together and have
Yeah.
seminars and stuff. It's like our own little convention, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a lifetime Cauliflower Alley Club, so I'm lifetime there. But the reason I mention that is Sin Bodhi, Kazarni from WWE. He runs his own LJN action figure line where he can do customs of either performers or movies or yourself or anybody. And so I went to him for some other figures, and I have two of those here. This is me, the old LGN me. And of course, I'm naked. I got a little leaf on there.
Like
So it's
David.
a naked Tim Chizmar wrestler. There's my ass. There. I'll take you down, Russian bear. And then I also my movie, which you haven't seen yet or anything, if you've watched the trailer for it, Hell's Coming for You. I play kind of a boss hog, kind of bounty hunter in a white suit with a cigar. And I have a Mossberg shotgun in the movie. So this is me from the movie. And we had these made up of some of our and they're like it's thick. His stuff's good. So those are a couple of the ones that I have at my place.
That's pretty rad. We both have action figures of ourselves. Are we self marks?
You know what Oprah says? When people say that you're full of yourself, you should respond back, who am I supposed to be full of? You? We have to be full of ourselves.
No, I totally agree. And like I told you earlier, this is like one of my prized possessions, and like somebody actually a fan made this for me. Grant, he's just a great kid. He's an adult now, but man, this is definitely one of my treasured like mementos of Sasha Derevko. I can always look at this figure and just reminisce about my old days as a bear wrestling Russian.
Well, you
Actually,
said something about changing your character. Are you still wrestling? Are you still active? I thought you were retired.
I did. I was retired. Well, I never really completely stopped. I was still doing wrestling pro wrestling, which is our little, I don't know if you've ever seen wrestling pro wrestling, but we do like crazy costumes and stuff. It's from the mind of Brian Kendrick. It's
I've
kind of,
I've compared it to Chikara Pro, like kind of a fun, silly, ridiculous kind of.
Yeah, we don't take ourselves too seriously. It's and then I get to do costume characters, right? So I hurt myself pretty seriously when I was Sasha. I got dropped on my head with a tombstone and kind of compressed my spine. I went to the chiropractor and he did a because I had a little shoulder thing going on. He did a X-ray and my neck is like kind of like this. Um, so that's just an old wrestler thing. I actually expected it to be worse. But
Yeah.
so I got hurt really seriously. I was 34 at the time. I had just done SmackDown a couple of weeks before I got hurt. So it was like this seminal moment in my life where I was like, holy shit, I'm wrestling in front of millions of people. And then I got hurt and I was kind of like, I'm getting old. I was 34, like I said at the time. WWE was the only show in town. There's no AEW to go to. So, and I knew WWE from being close to Brian wasn't really looking for 34-year-old wrestlers. They're looking for 24 to 28, was kind of like the sweet spot. So I'd kind of been like, you know what? I did my SmackDown match. I had my moment. Maybe it's time to just hang it up because almost broke my neck wrestling for $30 in front of 100 people in San Diego. So I did hang it up. I was still doing the costume stuff because it's not, really intensive on your body. I'm in this big fucking foam rubber costume. And I've been able to kind of make it work and just I believe in pro wrestling so much that I'm like, I'm just gonna do this show. But now it's 2024. I in really good shape. I've kind of had this new life, like new lease on life, kind of new life renaissance where my body feels great. I'm in a really good place mentally, and I kind of want to get out there and do it again. And I don't really have any aspirations to get to WWE at this point because now I'm 41, and they're looking for me even less than they were 7, 8 years ago. But I've kind of just got this wild hair at my ass, and I'm doing things in the ring that I couldn't do in my 20s. So I feel like my body feels good, and I have this new character that I want to do that kind of ties in all this art stuff that I'm doing. It's like a mystic, um, because I'm in this spiritual place right now where I feel like I put all these puzzle pieces together. I've always been kind of this guy that digs in rabbit holes and trying to figure out what's really going on this in this planet, And I grew up in the church, and it kind of swayed. I kind of got out of it where I was like, this isn't. I don't feel anything here. There's something more to this. So I study ancient cultures and kind of went through this whole spiritual thing about a year ago that it really kicked into high gear. I had a near death experience about 2 years ago, and it kind of got me that near death experience kind of got me looking at my life and seeing all the things I left undone, things I feel like unfinished business. So I haven't wrestled as this new character yet. I've kind of just, like I said, I've been making just different weird, the clock, the tarot deck, the coloring book. I got all these paintings. I got a bunch of, artwork that I put on t-shirts on my website, Alchemystic Apparel. There's like 30 something different designs. So I'm kind of just setting up this platform, to kind of bring everything together, the wrestling, the art, and the spirituality. And that's kind of where I'm at. A lot of people still want me to be Sasha Jarevko, I've found, which is, it's humbling because I've made this character that everybody still loves and resonates with. And it tells me that I was doing something right at the time, but I'm at this place as an artist where I don't want to do slipping on banana peel heel type of work. I never really got to showcase what I'm capable of physically because as a heel, your job is to get the babyface over and let him showcase his ability. And I was always just this dirty Russian heel that eventually loses in the end because that makes everybody happy, right? So artistically, I felt at some point around the time I got hurt that I was getting to this stale point with it, that I didn't really want to do that anymore. I wanted to do more spectacular things. And if you look at my Instagram, I'm doing some wild shit. Corkscrew, fucking springboard backflips and stuff like that. And so I think it's more geared towards this character, which is kind of like I would describe it as a guy that's found the God codes for for the video game. That's kind of how this character I'm portraying it is like a guy on God mode. Because I feel like I'm kind of on this creative journey and I'm holding this fucking lightning bolt and I feel like I've reached my full potential as a human being and I want to encourage other people to do the same. And so that's kind of how I'm using this. I want to use this character as a vehicle to kind of push this where I'm at philosophically. And so anyway, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but I haven't wrestled as the character yet. I was supposed to do it. I was supposed to wrestle on the 30th of March, but it got rained out. It was an outdoor show that got rained out. So, which kind of worked out because I had some merchandise stuff that I was still waiting for to come in the mail. So I got some fucking, here, I'll show you. I'll show you what else I got over here. I got these third eye glasses that if people follow my social media, I I made these glasses here that are like third eye glasses, and I put a little LED light here. I stick it in here on this little putty thing,
Yeah.
and it has a light that comes out of my third eye, so it looks like my third eye is enlightened. So I'm selling these as merchandise as well as my coloring books and tarot decks, my t-shirts, it's fucking clock that I just made. I'm just I'm in creator mode, bro. Um, so I hope to debut this character soon.
Yeah.
I just want to have the right place to do it at.
What's the character's name?
The Alchemystic Mike Vega. So Mike Vega was my first wrestling name back when well actually it was my second. My first wrestling name was Lance Crimson. I was a Canadian, right? Because I was when I was training for wrestling back in 2000, I trained in the class after Samoa Joe. That's how long ago I trained. I was 18 years old and I loved Canadian wrestlers. Like Bret Hart was my favorite wrestler. I was doing like Lance Storm, Chris Jericho, Bret Hart, Owen Hart moves, and my trainer's like, "Oh, your character is a Canadian." So that was my first character, and then I kept the Canadian thing, but I changed the name to Mike Vega, and had a little sort of run back then as Mike Vega, and then that was the name I used on the SmackDown match because I couldn't use Sasha Derevko. They just wanted some fucking jobber, right? They just wanted some like indistinguishable jobber. So I wore my old singlet and I wrestled as Mike Vega on SmackDown. So I was trying to figure out what I want this name to be because if you go to my Instagram, it's I am the Alchemystic, and I was thinking about doing I am as the name, and then I was making some artwork one day. This picture over here, I think it's buried, but it was like a 3D V, right? It looks like a 3D V around a Merkaba, and it just kind of clicked. I was like, why don't I just do Mike Vega, Alchemistic Mike Vega? That kind of flows a little bit. So that's going to be the name, the Alchemistic Mike Vega. I'll probably more refer myself as the Alchemistic because that's kind of like my whole brand. You know, I got Alchemystic Productions here. I am the Alchemistic is my IG handle. So I'm going with Alchemistic, which is the
Okay.
alchemist and mystic combined.
Right, right, right. A buddy of mine created Zen, the intergalactic ninja, and so he has this kind of like yin yangs and sci-fi, and he's like an alien that communicates telepathically and all this. So I was just curious if you were calling yourself Zen or anything like that, Zen chakra crystal or something, Uh, are you did you ever spend any time with Nigel McGuinness?
I've met him. He's friends with Kendrick, so I've met him before. I haven't spent a whole lot of time around him, but he's an interesting cat. He's doing magic now. He's like a full-on magician. He's trained at the Magic Castle and he's a really cool dude. From what I haven't had a lot of experience around him, but he seems like a really good guy.
Yeah, I got him into the Magic Castle. So I met Nigel when he was on the downswing when he left TNA and he had the hepatitis B and all this, and he wanted to do a documentary and he thought that his career was over. So the guy was literally driving an Uber and real depressed, and he was upset about the whole thing with Daniel Bryan. I never know which name to say. Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. Anyway, they both had this killer feud and Ring of Honor, you're probably aware of. And
Yes.
then they both were signed to WWE and they were excited we're going to go together. Well, they both had injuries prior, and the WWE people ask you, do you have any prior injuries? Well, Brian Danielson lied to them and said no, and he went right in. Nigel was honest and he said, yes, and he told him about an injury, and they took an x-ray and they said, well, we can't have you wrestling because of this. And so he ended up going to TNA, and then he was doing good there as Desmond Wolf. But Hogan had his guys come in, and they just took over, and they got rid of anybody who wasn't an immediate star from the 80s or whatever. So he was depressed. He was sad. He got into magic and stand up comedy. He used to do gigs with me. We used to go on the road. And the reason I'm telling you this is because he thought that all of his options were done, that he was he was never going to be anything in the business as far as pro wrestling. He was going to be a footnote in indie fans. And then what happened was WWE opened the UK division, and he had enough friends there who all said, well, you should get him on the mic. And he'd been doing commentary for I don't know, what was it, Ring of Honor, maybe some he was doing some commentary, bouncing around. And so he got in, and that changed everything. Did a documentary about him, and now he's in AEW, etc. So you never know what might happen. You never know. As long as you're smart about it and don't burn bridges and stuff, you could pop.
That's true. I mean, I did have a problem with burning bridges. That's why I stopped wrestling as Mike Vega. I had a whole run-in with Super Dragon back in the day around the time he made PWG. So that was my exit from wrestling the first time was I had kind of burned a bridge with a guy who's had a lot of swing, a little lot of sway. So, but like I'm a totally different person at this point. I'm 41 and I just love it so much. And I've gotten to do some really cool shit. I got to train Ronda Rousey with Kendrick, and now she's a really good friend of mine. And so being around her really inspired me, just to see all the things that she's doing. And it's kind of like, why not, man? And you, like you said, you never know. Like, I don't know if I really want to work for AEW after what they did to Kendrick, but one of the people that really inspires me is Bad Dude Tito. He's the guy I've been friends with since high school, and he's tearing it up right now. He's in Japan. He's on AEW. He's on MLW and like he's literally a free agent that's working everywhere. That's big, but WWE. And the fact that he's able to still go out there and really kill it at his age, we're almost the same age. He's a little younger than me, but um, it's kind of inspired me to be like, why not? I feel great. I'm in this really good place in my life, and it's something that I've always loved and felt I left a lot of things undone. So I would like to just go out and kind of show what I can do before I get too old, and use it as a vehicle to kind of push my art and push my message. I try to have an inspirational message for people. That's what this podcast is about too, is showing people that, hey, like you don't have to always just be that cookie cutter person. And even if you are somebody who's on the 9 to 5 or on the hamster wheel, your life has meaning. It's valuable. You're a valuable person. A lot of people forget about that. They get stuck in these ruts of like, run on the hamster wheel. Oh, well, my life isn't meaningful. There's nothing special about me. But it's like everybody's got a beautiful story to tell. So that's kind of where I'm at in my life, man. I'm trying to I want to help and inspire people, and showcase people like yourself who you aren't doing it the traditional way, but you're successful, and I'm sure you're having a lot more fun with your life than people who are just trying to make ends meet. So we're almost out of time, but before we go, I just want to get one last, in that same vein and in that same spirit. What would be your advice for somebody who wants to kind of follow in your footsteps, maybe moving to LA or getting into the entertainment business or just chasing a dream in general? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, there's lots of advice. It's a shame we're running out of time. I wanted to talk to you more about the Kendrick thing. That was
I mean, we
interesting.
we could go to part three. We could go to part three. I just didn't know if you're strapped on time, but we can definitely go to a part three. We can actually like stop here and then take on. We'd have the advice, and then we could go further if you want. Let's
Yeah,
do it.
just
Let's do it, man. Yeah,
fine.
dude. I could talk all fucking night. I could literally talk all fucking night. Watch my other podcast, bro. I can't. Sometimes I can't stop talking. So there we
Yeah.
go. We'll be back with part three with Tim.
Do you like psychedelics? Do you like staring for hours at trippy pictures while using psychedelics? Well, look no further. We here at Alchemystic Productions specialize in paintings that will open portals in your mind. Hi there, I'm the Alchemistic, and I guarantee that staring at these paintings will give you access to super secret light codes that will activate your DNA. But don't take my word for it. Take it from the man himself. That's right, the OG Alchemistic. All of my artwork is Christ approved. Who do you think put the light codes there in the first place? After all, I'm just a vessel. He's the real artist of the universe. Am I right? He even made this self-portrait with these very hands. This is the Lion of Judah. He also wants me to tell you he's not too thrilled that you changed his image to look like a Da Vinci painting of a white Pope's son, or that you changed his name to some Greek mistranslation that has you praying to the son of Zeus. Haven't you ever seen Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade? There's no J in the Hebrew alphabet. Duh. What's that? What's that, Yeshua? Oh, right, the commercial. But wait, there's more. Can't afford a painting, but still want access to the super secret light codes? Well, you're in luck. Alchemystic Apparel has t-shirts with over 30 of my designs that are sure to enlighten you and the kids, and for the low, low price of $24.99. A small price to pay for the secrets of the universe. Check out this little number I got on right here. This is the death card. Butterflies are so metal, bro. But wait. GoldenEye. Slide into my DMs for exclusive pricing on these brilliant paintings that will literally blow your mind. And if you can't afford a painting, there's always a t-shirt, alchemisticapparel.com, $24.99. The secrets of the universe. What more do you want? And don't forget, check out my podcast, Talking to Strangers, on Alchemystic Productions on YouTube. The links are in my bio.
And we are back for part 3 with Tim. So Tim, we left off talking about wrestling.
I would like to be referred to as the champion, if you don't
champ.
mind.
All right, champ.
Right.
What do you got for me? You said you got some notes.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned the Kendrick thing in passing, and I know you're his friend. You already said that, but you said I don't like the way AEW treated Kendrick. Didn't Kendrick kind of bake his own goose by saying the Holocaust didn't happen and shit like that?
So here's the whole scoop on the Kendrick thing, and I don't want to talk too much for Brian, but so this Brian had gone through a lot of shit to get out of his WWE contract as a I guess at that point he was a producer. They weren't really using him in ring, and he wanted to wrestle, and Danielson had left to go to AEW, and that was a dream he always had, was to wrestle Danielson on a big stage, because they trained together. They're like really good friends. And so I had seen Brian go through this whole process to try to get to where he could wrestle again. And then he finally got his shot. You know, AEW picked him up after he left WWE. He was, you know, all set to wrestle Moxley. And then this old clip of High Spot's shoot interview comes out where he's spouting all of this conspiracy stuff, right? And if people remember at the time, Brian was kind of doing this like airy-fairy weirdo in TNA, and he didn't really get to really flesh out that character, I think, as much as he wanted to. And when he did that interview, he was a point in his life where he had already been fired from WWE. He'd left TNA. There was no AEW or anything else. So he was at a point in his career where he's like, I need to generate some kind of buzz, right? Like I need to get some kind of heat. And he wanted to really go down the conspiracy road with this character, because him and I, we're both big conspiracy guys, right? We do it. We read this stuff, and I don't really read it as much anymore, but it's more entertainment, right? It's like we're reading everything and thinking, oh, that's, and believing everything we read, which is this common misconception about people who are into conspiracies, is that we go to these like black web fucking websites and like 4chan and shit, and then we just consume all this content and believe everything we read. And no, it's like it's kind of funny to us, some of the wild shit these people, you know, these journalists in the conspiracy world write about. So he wanted to kind of explore
Yeah.
this character as a wild conspiracy guy, right? So he goes on this High Spots interview and you know, spouts all this stuff about the Holocaust, and this is all like, and Jim Cornette and Disco Inferno both kind of came to his defense. They're the only people that really understood what Brian was doing in that interview. Like Jim Cornette's like, he's saying such wild shit. There's no way he believes all this stuff, you know, and kind of came to his defense in a way and saying, look, this is wrestling, like, and yeah, the shit he said was bad, but like he's trying to get heat, right? And that's, you know, pretty much the scenario of, and this was like 10 years prior. This is from like 2013 or 2014, right? So when he said this stuff, nobody gave a fuck, right? It literally like slipped under the radar. This wasn't during cancel culture era. Like nobody gave a shit about him talking about this stuff back then,
Yeah.
right? And so
So
it's, go ahead.
what should they have done? Should they have given him a chance to respond and then stood by him? Is that what you want to see?
So my big problem with how it was handled, right? So the stuff comes out, and obviously we're in this cancel culture era where like all this old shit that you said 10 years ago can get trumped up for you to get canceled now. And what really fucked everything up was Tony Khan tweeting about it. And that's what really got the mainstream outlets, not just mainstream wrestling outlets, but like mainstream media outlets were coming out talking about Brian as a Holocaust denier and really like besmirching his name without giving him a chance to provide context. The proper context was, this was a fucking weirdo character I was doing, like where I was just saying all this shit. And Brian was at a point in his life, like I said, where like he didn't give a fuck. He just wanted to get some buzz around his name again, and really like try to push the envelope as an artist, push the envelope with a character, and get people to start talking about him, right? And then it ended up backfiring 10 years later when some, you know, internet turd fucking dug it up out of the garbage can and fucking brought it to the forefront. And then it got highlighted at like, as this is the type of person he is, which he's not. Like Brian Kendrick is one of the most genuine, loving, like fucking helpful human beings. Like he's done so much for me at a time in my life where I was broken, and he stood by me and helped me through some really bad times in my life. And that's the type of person he is. He's somebody that will give opportunities to people, which he does with wrestling, pro wrestling. Like if you look at our roster, like our roster isn't like stacked with fucking next level talent. He's giving opportunities to people who show up and just want to be a part of the show, right? And
Hmm.
so the characterization of Brian as a bigot was fucking ridiculous, and it always has been. And then this was mainstream media outlets besmirching his name like that. And to see somebody who is my close friend, who had stuck by me through terrible times, and who I know his character, I know who he is, and he's not that person. And to see his fall from grace at a time when he was trying to restart his career and really get an opportunity to live his dream again, right? And he deserved that opportunity. He deserved that opportunity because Brian Kendrick is the smartest fucking wrestler in the world. I will tell you that right now. He's a genius. He's a fucking pro wrestling genius. And most people that know him and have worked with him will tell you the same thing. He's a fucking incredible performer. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he deserved that opportunity, and it got taken from him. And if AEW, instead of Tony Khan tweeting about it and really shining a light on this situation, he could have just removed Brian from the show, put somebody else in that place, and then figured it out and like given him the platform, which they didn't do. They fucked him over after that too, which is what really pisses me off. Is like they took this opportunity from him, they put it out there to allow these media outlets to smear his name, and then all the lawyers in their fucking back rooms decided that they couldn't redeem him after they were the ones who fucked him. They said he's not redeemable, and they fucking just cast him off like a piece of shit. And he's not a piece of shit. He's an amazing fucking human being. And it really pisses me off. I'm getting fucking blood boiling right now talking about it, because this man deserved that chance, and the world deserved a chance to see him on that stage performing with the best wrestlers in the world, to show that he is as good or better than most of those fucking guys. And guys that have done worse things have gotten multiple opportunities. People that have gone to fucking jail and assaulted people and fucking had DUI arrests and really put other people's lives in danger in terrible ways and said things about raping girls that those guys are still fucking there, right?
No,
And
I get it. I get it. I'm not Tony Khan. Don't
yeah,
kind of
no, no,
promo
no.
on
Sorry,
me.
sorry, man. Like
Listen, I
this is
get
really
it.
it's really close to my heart, man. Like this is
No.
the one of the biggest injustices I've ever seen in my life is to see my fair friend put
Yes.
in that position that he didn't
Well,
deserve to be in because people didn't understand what was going on. Um, and you know, in hindsight, he probably should have come out with more of an explanation than just a tweet, but he was put in this position by the lawyers where they're like, you can't talk about it. And then they just fucking cast him off without giving him a chance to really sit down and say, look, this is the situation, right? I've been unfairly characterized. I was doing a fucking bit that I don't think that the Holocaust was a fucking sham. I have Jewish friends, which he does. You know, he's friends with Colt Cabana. He's friends with, you know, other people that are in our fucking wrestling pro wrestling show who are Jewish, who are like, this is fucked up. Brian doesn't think like this. This isn't Brian, you know? And so it's just a huge injustice. So that's my take on the whole situation. It was just fucked up. And it still hasn't been corrected because if you search Brian's name on Google, the first things that pop up are those mainstream media articles talking about him being a Holocaust.
I get it. I get it. Yeah, and you look at when you mentioned the guys who've done worse, look at Ric Flair. When that documentary came out and they talked about the stuff he did to the flight attendants. And before that, I've had friends tell me stories about him, and again, like I'm a nudist, but it's like a non-sexual. When Ric Flair pulls his cock out, he's assaulting somebody or he's like pushing it on them. And it's pretty skeevy, but he gets a pass because he's Ric Flair. And I have friends who've been canceled for different things, and I'll be happy to get on my soapbox and defend them because look at Shane Gillis. I mean, to get away from wrestling for a second, Shane was offered to be on Saturday Night Live. Then they went through the history of his podcast and found a clip of him doing an Asian accent and making fun of Asian people. But he's a comedian. He's making fun of everybody. I was a stand-up for 10 years. That's what we do. And then they kicked him off, and he turned that around into such a big star that he went back and hosted the damn show.
I know.
So Kendrick's not out, but the thing I talked to Joey Ryan is a dear friend of mine, and Joey had a bunch of sex. Mm-hmm. Oh, what did he do? He didn't do a damn thing. There's no crimes. There's nothing. He's never been arrested. He's never been charged. Some people decided they didn't like that he had a lot of sex. Yeah, well, he did. And so what? So the thing is, yeah, it's pretty sucky, but I feel like if you just let people, and I get it, if you had lawyers telling him what to do, but I just wish more people would stand up and say something on the opposite and not let them cancel you. Look at like a Dave Chappelle or some of these other guys who they say what they want to say. Oh, you don't like what I'm saying about trans people? Well, fuck you. And he's still there. He's doing his thing. But if you, oh, I'm so sorry, because the thing is, the apology crowd, you can never apologize enough. When you bow your knee down and say, oh, am I okay now? It never stops. It never stops. Never stops.
It's the problem with cancel culture in general. And I think we've kind of gotten to a point, it's been a couple of years now. And I think the society at large has more or less started to kind of get tired and sick of all that shit. And these people who are on their soapbox trying to cancel people, I don't think it's as prevalent as it was around that time. It was really bad back then. Part of it, I think, was because of COVID and just this crazy societal fucking psychosis we were going through with this fucking pandemic, and it caused people who were bored to, oh, I'm gonna look into this guy's history, and we all have things that we've done in the past and said in the past that we probably regret and wouldn't want everybody knowing about. But unfortunately for Brian, he was put in this position and had some of his skeletons come back up, and it's unfortunate. And I think now that we're a couple of years removed from it, and not just his situation, but several situations, like we got to give some grace. Like Joey Ryan, I can't speak on the allegations and the women that have come out against him, but like you said, there's no police reports. There's nothing, and
No molestation, no rape, no. What did he do? What did he do? Everybody says he's a jerk, he's an asshole. What? What did he do? He had sex. He had a lot of sex.
And
what did he do?
I think it created an environment where, like I said, I don't want to speak on the allegations and try to like discount what these women are saying. But in situations like that, victimhood currency is very high, right? So you have a lot of people who maybe the situation was they had sex with him and then afterwards they're having, dick remorse. Oh, I shouldn't have fucked that guy. I shouldn't have fucked that guy.
Of
And
course.
then somebody comes out against them, and then that causes this snowball where it's like, well, yeah, he did that to me too, and me too. So it's like I said, I don't want to get too deep down that rabbit hole because
I have other notes. I have lots of stuff to talk about. So
but yeah, that's the Kendrick situation and cancel culture at large is like we need to give grace. Like nobody let he without sin cast the first stone to quote my good buddy Christ. There, and this is the understanding that we need to come to is that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we can't just throw somebody on a boat and cast them to an island, like there's that we have to give them, like with Joey Ryan, that people came and got him fired from Disneyland for being a Jungle Cruise operator.
I know.
Like that's insane. That's fucking insane. Let the guy live his fucking life and make a living. Like he's still got to eat. Like we aren't, or are we gonna just make Joey Ryan starve and become homeless because, it's just that there has to be forgiveness, right? It's one of the kind of the hallmarks of being a human, right? Is a spirit.
He's went through Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. He's done the work. He's tried to understand where these people are coming from and whatever. He deserves the right to move on and have his life. But you mentioned being a Canadian as your wrestler. When I was running my promotion in Pennsylvania, I had the all-nighters, and she was calling herself Firebird Phoenix back then. I had Beth Phoenix come. They used to come from Canada, from the Heart Dungeon, the last couple of people to train there, and they would come down and wrestle for my indie fed. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. What about now when it comes to Zen and philosophy and stuff? Have you ever gotten into Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance? Robert Persig?
I have. That's a book, I'm guessing, right? I have not read it. No, I have not read it.
It's so much more than just a book. It's a philosophy. It's a class. I'm champion. It is giant. People can get master's degrees in what he created called metaphysics of quality. And the guy, Robert Persig, he's my favorite philosopher because he's a true philosopher. One of his things that he says, and this is so true, when you take a philosophy class in college, nowadays it's more like philosophology. It's like the study of philosophers. You learn about when people used to think about society and life and meaning and purpose and who are we and where are we going in consciousness. You learn about those guys thinking about that. You don't learn how to philosophize. You don't learn how to be a philosopher today. You learn about how they used to do it. And so he wrote this book. The first book was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, where he discussed our culture and the difference, the split between thinking one way and thinking another way. So like really artistic people versus nuts and bolts, I'm going to work on my car kind of people. And he talks about that. He talks about society. He talks about life. And in particular, he was a guy who had such a high IQ that he thought about things that you're not supposed to think about, like meaning, purpose, reason, what are we doing, where are we going? And he ended up giving himself, he ended up being admitted to an insane asylum. And they did electroshock therapy on his brain until they wiped him clear. This isn't a character in the story. This is the real man. And they wiped his brain clean. And then they told him, when they rebuilt him, they taught him how to be a human again. And they said, don't ever think about the stuff you used to think about, because that's what got you in here. That's what drove you insane. So when he got out, he was terrified to think about the big stuff again. And he ended up going into Buddhism and Zen, and he became a college professor. Again, he had been before it. He wrote this book, which basically tackled the stuff that drove him crazy the first time. And it's really interesting. But what's most fascinating about this is the first book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, has never went out of publication, never. And the book is in high demand. It's being taught in classes. They do reports about it. But the first book was a story with a little bit of metaphysics. He then did a follow-up book roughly 30 years later, called Lila, An Inquiry into Morals. And he thought that because the first book was so well received, he could finally go off the deep end and really do a book about metaphysics with a little bit of story. And what happened was most people don't get it. Most people don't understand it, and they think it's too out there. It's the kind of book that you read a couple of sentences and then you put it down and you think about it for a day. Like, it is powerful stuff. And I purposely read it because my philosophy teacher told me not to read it. She said, you know, we're going to study Zen, we're going to do a class, we're going to talk about it, it's going to be fun, but don't read his follow-up book because that's crazy. That's craziness. And it's fantastic. And a guy like you, the stuff that you cling on to, I think that this is right up your alley. This will blow your mind. If you looked at my copy, it's just got notes all over it. And it's really, it's deep thinking for a culture and a country that doesn't do a lot of deep thinking.
I would love to dive into that. And yet that's unfortunate about, you know, the way we're at in our society is they don't want you to kind of go into the fringe. They don't want you to, they want you to be like kind of like we were talking about earlier about LA and the open-mindedness. You could be open-minded if you're open-minded like me, you know,
Yep.
and when you're teaching philosophy, like you say, they don't teach you how to philosophize. Oh, these guys thought like this, but they don't want you to ever break that glass ceiling. They don't want you to break that wall because there are some wild things behind it, right? And the best the best person, the best citizen is a non-thinking citizen. They don't want people to really explore their mind. They don't want people they don't want people to create like societies like Plato where, you know, they're talking about mathematics and they're wrestling each other. You know, that's the interesting thing about Plato is he had this little society, this theosophical society where, you know, you had to, you know, understand mathematics and you had to be able to fight. It was like a fight club of philosophers. But that's
I'm
kind of
actually go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
no. Like me and Kendrick are both really into philosophy. He likes to listen to like philosophy podcasts and stuff. But what we've talked about is like at some point in philosophy, you almost like turn towards cynicism, right? Like nothing means anything, and then they go crazy and kill themselves. A lot of these like really deep philosophers, and maybe that's why they don't want people getting too deep down in there because there's some fucking dark shadows down there in the human psyche, and if we just keep our blinders on and move forward and never address the shadow, you know, then we'll be okay, right? It's this fear-based thinking of like, let's just keep our eyes focused forward and don't look over here and don't look over there. Don't look in that dark hole. Don't look in that dark hole. But in reality, like the light is really in the darkness. At least that's what I've come to find is like you don't find your true self unless you explore the shadow, unless you explore that deep dark hole, that abyss that's within.
Well,
But there's
that's
also
why
scary shit down there.
that's why you would love Lila. He literally talks about, think about what you get when you go to an insane asylum. You have people telling you about something they literally don't know what they're talking about. They've not been crazy.
Because they've
They've
never
not
been
fallen
there.
off the ledge. Yeah.
Hmm.
So he's like, you literally have people telling you they don't know. They don't know a damn thing about it. And so he talks about the importance of solitude and quiet and meditation, and he talks about what it's like to be out of your mind and then try to get back into it. And he really goes into detail on this stuff, and it's fascinating. So I think it's up your alley.
I would love to read it. I've kind of been on that journey myself, my friend. If you really look back at the past year plus of my Instagram, I had this experience that where I just kind of my mind, my body, and my soul just broke. It was like the divine took those three eggs and scrambled them all together. And I feel like if you've been watching my content for the past year, you probably thought I lost my mind at some point, which I did. You know, literally the whole a true spiritual awakening of the Kundalini, you kind of go batshit for a while, and it's like you have to relearn life. Your mind kind of just it's like exploring all your childhood traumas and the pains and the you know the wounds that we've kind of pushed away. You know, because we've been taught, especially as men, we're taught to just push our emotions down and never address them, right? So it accumulates all of this baggage deep within our emotional body, and sometimes you have to break. You have to fucking break to really. It's like Humpty Dumpty, dude. But there's no king's horses and king's men. It's just you. Like you're an egg that breaks, and then you have to put all the fucking pieces back together. And
Well,
it's
speaking of which, I have a short story that was in a collection called A Valley of Light and Shadow, Las Vegas Writers on Good and Evil. And it's out right now. I don't know if this is going to be backwards in it. It looks
no,
backwards
yeah,
to
I
me.
could see it. It's the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. So basically they got a bunch of us writers together. They reached out to pro writers in Vegas, and they wanted us to write a story either about how we were decent people and came to Vegas and turned evil, or we were somewhat evil people and came to Vegas and turned good. So I wrote my story, and I'd love to share it with you because I think it's a good way to wrap all this stuff up.
Yeah.
Before I do, I do want to mention conspiracy theories. You know, all somebody has to do to look into conspiracy theories and know that there's some truth to it is Tower 7. There's never been a good explanation for Tower 7
Brother,
on that day when other towers went down.
I was
So
18. I was 18 when 9/11 happened. And when I was watching that shit, I had a mushroom trip like 2 weeks before, right? And I had this premonition in this mushroom trip. Something told me like there's something big coming and it's going to change everything and nothing's ever going to be the same. And I was like, oh, that's odd. And then 9/11 happened and I was like, holy fuck, this is the thing, you know? And then so like that got me like kind of my spidey sense kind of kicked in like, okay, I had this premonition about this event and now I'm watching it like deja vu. What the fuck is going on? And then nothing ever made sense. It was kind of like a lot with the COVID stuff is like the narrative of the mainstream, you could pick it apart. And so that's what really got me into conspiracies, first of all, you know, and you're right. Building 7 has never been explained. And like Larry Silverstein was on some kind of interview where he talked about how they pulled Building 7 because of fire or something like that. So they admitted that they collapsed that building. Or Larry Silverstein, who was the guy who got the insurance claim, he was the owner of the complex. He talks
yeah,
about how they like intentionally pulled that building, and how did they have, why are there charges to collapse a building inside of a building that you didn't know was going to be on fire, right? So there's a lot of weird shit. And then
yeah,
look at like the airline stock. A lot of
yeah.
people made a lot of money shorting airline stocks, like a lot of people. So
Well,
there's a lot of evidence of foreknowledge that was going to happen. So anyways, we ought to
Jesse
get down that rabbit hole.
Jesse Ventura on his show Conspiracy Theory said that one of the things that was on the black box recordings from the crashes that nobody talks about is that the terrorists didn't take over the planes. They were there at the start of the planes. They were there at the beginning. They were the ones in the cockpit taking off. That's what he said was on the black box recordings. So
I thought one of the biggest things that made me call bullshit on everything was the fact that they found Muhammad Atta's passport in the fucking rubble. That they literally, like, on the news, they talked about how, oh, we found Muhammad Atta's passport in the rubble. Like, there's fucking no way that you're gonna
yeah,
find an intact passport of somebody that was on a plane that crashed into a building that collapsed. Like, and no buildings ever collapsed from fire, and those buildings were built to sustain a collision with an airliner, right? There's all kinds of shit, man. There's
yeah,
all
yeah,
kinds of shit. And why would the building collapse on top of itself like a controlled demolition? It was like, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole
yeah.
fucking. There's a lot of bullshit about 9/11. I'll just tell you guys that much. Like that, there's a reason why I got so into conspiracies, because there was so much things that you could point out and be like, no, wait a minute, what about this? What about this?
Yeah.
Um. So
So
anyway, back to the book.
this is called Neon Bastard, and it's only 10 pages, so it's not going to be super long, but it's powerful and emotional. And we had an event here in Vegas, and I headlined the event by reading this story, and you know people were crying and stuff. So it's good. It's
All
worth
right, let's
worth
hear it,
reading.
man. Let's
Okay,
hear
okay,
it.
okay. Here we go. Story time with Tim. Here we go. Okay, Neon Bastard by Tim Chizmar. In the self-help section of any bookstore, you will find books on how to deal with a difficult loved one or a narcissistic boss. Books with titles like Overcoming the A-hole in-law or 101 Ways to Survive the Egotistical Supervisor. In this section, however, I've never seen a book about what do you do if the problem is you? What if you are the asshole? What if you are the conflicted person with walls around your heart and trust issues on top of trust issues, always expecting the worst from every outcome or interaction? What if you are generally a miserable SOB? What if that is what you see when you lock eyes with yourself in the mirror? What if the problem is completely inside your skull? What then? What if you were like me? A few years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, I was a guest of honor at the world premiere for the animated DC Comics film Batman Hush. All the voice actors and animators were on the red carpet. In the plot for a film like this, typically the larger-than-life heroes fight it out, then team up later on to ultimately defeat the big villain in a movie to save the day. I sat in the audience watching the predictable outcome with a few of my clients, and there was a moment in the movie that has stayed with me. The villainous Poison Ivy gains control of Superman's mind by way of her kryptonite lipstick, and with a kiss or two, she bends him to her evil will. Superman chases Batman and Catwoman, shooting lasers from his eyes and causing havoc and destruction. It's during this wild chase that Catwoman asks Batman why Superman hasn't already killed them with his incredible power. Superman is practically a god with a range of abilities from his chilling frost breath and supersonic speed to his flight abilities and invulnerability. How does one fight against all that? Batman's response struck a chord with me. As he straps kryptonite-laced brass knuckles to his fists, he said, "Yes, if he wanted, we'd be dead already. Deep down, he's a good person. And deep down, I'm not." When Batman was a child, his parents were shot and died in front of him. That event led to his disciplined way of living and fighting crime, living as a loner in a pitch black cave. He came to terms with his personal darkness. I can relate. At my core, I am not a good person. My parents are convicted felons who met on a bus coming back from serving their prison sentences. My mother had tied up and tortured a stranger with boiling water, stabbing him repeatedly. My father had been a drug dealer. In my youth, I learned how to use manipulation to get what I wanted. I learned that if you play by the rules, you're a sucker. Is it any wonder that I ended up working in Hollywood? In my earlier line of work, I dealt with many celebrities with giant egos, substance problems, and entitlement issues. Having sharp fangs and a dark heart helped me land multi-million dollar opportunities for my clients. But being not good also left me lonely and without a close personal circle. When all your friends are opportunistic snakes, it's hard to let your guard down. My Hollywood aspirations of success hit what I thought was rock bottom in December of 2016. I got angry and jealous because I was told over and over again I was good enough for me to work on certain film and television projects. The proposals I wrote were getting rejected on a regular basis. Best I could do was option my screenplays where I was paid, but the scripts would get shelved. I was not actually a money motivated person. I was in it for the art. So I stopped caring about anyone else, fired my manager, and mismanaged what was left of my money. I also was not bringing in anything new. Soon I was evicted. My car was set to be repossessed, and I had never felt so alone in the world. I was broke emotionally and financially in the deepest, most real way. I packed everything I could find in my vehicle and headed north. A friend had offered that I stay with her home in Billings, Montana. I figured I could take some time off until I knew what my next step in life would be. The long, desperate drive was fraught with snow, bald tires, and no car insurance. The journey took not only the very last dollar I had in gas, but also my last shred of any confidence or security. I was lost and I needed help, purpose, meaning, direction. On my way to Billings, I remember driving through Las Vegas. Upon seeing the lights and promise, fame and fortune, craziness and thrills, I wondered who are these people and what it would possibly be like to live amongst them. I promised myself that one day, if I ever got my shit together, I would like to settle there for a new life. Anyhow, I made it from North Hollywood, California to Billings, Montana. I cried and screamed with the very best of Sheryl Crow on repeat. I barely stopped to use a restroom and sped as fast as I could, arriving in 26 hours. This fresh living arrangement lasted less than a week. The friend had rented her spare room to a family with a child, a family that was paying her money. This was a horrible shock. I was devastated that a trusted friend would do that to me. I had come all that way only to be screwed over by a familiar face. I felt as though nothing mattered. Nobody loved me, and I was utterly worthless. What had I done to deserve this? I wasn't brave enough to really confront the question. I sat in my car in front of a homeless shelter, considering suicide. I scrolled through all the names of famous people in my phone. I knew I couldn't be real with any of them. And I wouldn't know what to say if I tried. Our relationships were built on photo opportunities and lies. My father had not been in my life at all. My mother took my sister and me and ran off when we were very young. She got welfare and hid us away. My father's response was to let her have us and not tell his side of the family he ever had kids. When I reached out to him in my junior year of high school, I decided to finally strike a deal with him. With my well-crafted sales pitch, I proposed that he teach me how to drive a car since he had done nothing else, and it was the least that he could do. It was only after he and his new wife had met with my sister and I and introduced us to our stepbrother that he finally told his parents and his sister that we even existed. They were worse than surprised. They were disgusted, as we were a blemish on the family line. Although he had done time for drugs, the family was blue-blooded with old money, and we were not welcome. I reflected on all this as I sat in that parking lot with the snow piling on my 2011 Nissan Versa. An idea sparked in my mind. I remembered that my aunt, that I barely knew, lived in Boise, Idaho. We did not have much of a relationship, but I texted her with shaky, frightened fingers. Remarkably, she responded, and we spoke on the phone. She sent money to me that night, and I drove to her estate. I threw out everything and spent 2017 rebuilding what I thought I knew about life. My aunt was never all that close to my father, as it turned out. He was a prick, too. He had died a few years prior. Apparently, I looked enough like him that my aunt felt like if she helped me, then maybe it was a way of making amends. She had never been all that close with him, and maybe this was reparation. She paid off my car and arranged that I make payments to her. I ended up renting a room near my job at a tiny school in the Idaho mountains where I was a psychosocial rehabilitator. This is also where I took the time to work on my first full-length novels. The job had me working with children who suffered from anger issues and poor home lives, kids who would act out and throw tantrums. The things I saw tugged at my heart because I was told to fix the kid when I believed that the parents were really the problem. Alcoholism, abuse, and neglect were the norm. It was an opportunity for me to do something selfless, to focus on others without any ulterior motives. I was not going to get a producer credit for spending a Saturday fishing with a neglected 8-year-old. However, the more of this I did, the more I saw of myself in these lost kids. I remember taking a group of kids to a church as part of a respite care program. One boy told me that the building used to be a grocery store. I was confused. But after talking to the preacher, I realized that the boy and his mom would come there for charity donations a few times a month. His story had a hint of familiarity. I was learning to speak with truth and sincerity. I learned to communicate with parents and teachers, even if it wasn't easy. Before, I had preferred an angle instead of straight honesty. To put this in perspective, the year prior, while at a Hollywood party, I had pummeled a stranger, leaving him in a puddle of his own blood for daring to call me a fraud. Now I was the trusted adult instructing lessons in conflict resolution to wayward Idaho youth. I never prepared myself for grace and compassion. I was learning as much by teaching as I had by living. I recall a day where my friend, the actor and comedian Brandon Ficara, reached out to me for the $1,000 he had lent me. It was a particularly trying day, and instead of responding to him with lies or twisting the truth to save face, I was completely honest with him. I told him that I was broke, feeling alone and scared, and trying hard to do the right thing, and that nobody loved me. I told him I was trying hard to rebuild my life and that I was sorry I wasn't a better friend. His response had my eyes welling up with tears. Brandon said, "It's only money. I love you." Tears rolled down my fat cheeks and splattered on my desk. I had tried to prepare myself for screams and insults, but I had never prepared myself for that response for grace. Brandon taught me about mindsets of great abundance and unlimited friends, money, love, opportunity versus the mindset of scarcity, where there's a limited amount. If someone gets something, it means that you lost out and there's less for you. He also taught me that in life, you can choose to be right or you can choose to be happy. It's wise to sometimes keep your mouth shut. Between this help and entering regular therapy and a self-help group, I started to get my head straight. I was doing better and making healthier choices. Since I knew my aunt's family didn't agree with her helping me recover, I knew that I was ready to leave for something permanent. After paying her off, I wanted to settle someplace where I had never lived before, somewhere nobody knew me. I could start over completely fresh with a crowd of ever changing faces, a place where my celebrity contacts might be blowing through town and I could say hi, but I wouldn't feel the need to keep up with them. A place where there is no snow and businesses can be open late. A nerdy bastard like me, I had to ask, where would Bruce Wayne live? I needed my Gotham City. The year 2018 approached, and I decided that Las Vegas, Nevada was my next Batcave. It is May of 2020 as I finish this essay. Although I am back working in entertainment, I can say that not living in Los Angeles provides me an opportunity to feel the warmth of the business without getting burned by living in it. I got my best friend, a cat. He lives with me in his retirement home. My condo is just off the strip. I named my new publishing house and production company after him, Spooky Ninja Kitty. I launched the Las Vegas chapter of the Horror Writers Association with writer Mercedes Yardley. I won some awards and made the Amazon bestseller list twice. I also attend therapy sessions and commit daily to my life goals to stay motivated. I have paid back anyone I owed money to with interest, and I continue to pay my bills on time like a responsible adult instead of being a self-serving prick. I tend to focus more on the clients and their goals and dreams. One of them recently wrote a screenplay, and we shot the movie partially in Las Vegas, where she even wrote a part in it for me. It comes out later this year on all the streaming platforms on the Tree of Life. What I'm saying is I'm a twisted up stick. But you know what? Sometimes God makes straight lines with crooked sticks. I'm learning to accept myself and to like myself, and I even appreciate Superman a little more.
Brother, what an amazing story, man. That's exactly the type of stories that this podcast is meant to share with people, because life is not easy. We come across these periods of time in our life. We all do, these cycles of, like you said, of scarcity, of lack, of fear and doubt, and like, what am I going to do? I see no way forward. And unfortunately, a lot of people take the step of I can't go on, and they take their own life. You said you were going through the suicidal period where you just, you had no outs in your mind. You're thinking, I have no outs, and you're able to pull yourself out of that. And you had, your lifeline was your aunt, and she, and it just like shows you guys, like, if people out there watching this podcast, if you're ever in this position, take it from Tim's story. Like, that's fucking inspiring. Like, he was at his absolute bottom where he's like, I don't think I can go on, and he found a way out. And there are people out there, no matter how alone you think you are, no matter how desperate your life seems, you feel like there's no way forward, like, there's people out there that will help you. You just have to reach out, and don't be afraid to take that leap, to take that text that, he said his hands are shaking as he's texting his aunts. This is his last chance. And like, you all have a last chance. There is no reason to take away your own gift. This life is a gift. As much as hard as it can be to get through the dark times, this life is a gift. And if you guys can just find it in yourself, if you're in this dark place, to just reach out to somebody. Do not take that step and lose your gift, because there is a way out. And you can look at Tim now. Tim is a successful man. He's a fucking artist. He's a writer. He's just a incredible human being.
Well, you
And
saw the documentary crew. They're literally making a documentary about me doing this stuff.
yeah, and it's like, it's inspiring that you took this. This was 6 years ago, right? Like, 6 years ago, you thought it was over, and look at you 6 years later. You guys never know when it can turn around. It can turn around like that. Life can turn around in a fucking instant, and then all of a sudden, you have this new lease on life, this new direction. Like, even if you feel like there's no path forward, you're at the wall and you're banging your head against the wall. I can't get through this fucking wall. Take a fucking left. You never have to resort to that last step of I'm gonna end this. Like, just, there's always somebody out there that will be there for you.
I can understand it. I can understand why they do. And if you listen to the story, I had a friend who I had known 10 years. And she said, I know you're depressed. I know you're upset. I know you're going through things. Come, come to Billings, Montana. You can live in my house. I own a house. You can stay with my family. You can rebuild. And what happened? I spent the last bit of my money to get out there, and she rented my room to somebody else. She knew I was coming. She invited me. And I got there and I said, what the hell is this? Well, they're paying rent. You understand. What? And so, when I reached out to my aunt, we weren't close. That was the side of my family that disowned me and didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I'm the product of a prison hookup. So the fact that my father had passed away a few years before and I look a lot like him, she felt bad that she wasn't closer to her brother. She didn't invite him to one of her weddings, etc. So she saw it in her heart to, help me. And I got there and I didn't expect anything more than, a couple of nights of a warm house before I figured out what I was going to do. And she took me on as like a little pet project. And she had her issues. She's, nobody's perfect, but she tried. She tried to help and she took me in and, she did the best she could. And I have a friend of mine I was texting between us right here. But between the podcast coming back, and he's going through a really horrible time. He got caught up in something and he lost his wife and his daughter, not dead, but like they're leaving him, and he's going through some stuff. And some people who are his friends have turned their backs on him because he made a mistake. And how do you, on your podcast, do you talk about the stuff you told me?
Yeah,
Off
we did an
podcast?
episode. The first episode in season 2, I go into it a little bit, and then the second episode I had with Stefan, who is also a friend of my co-host. We go in detail into what happened with James.
Okay. Well, because I don't want to be
No,
disrespectful.
you're
So,
good.
okay. So what you shared with me, the thing that stood out the most to me about it was the kind of person who would do what you just said. A lot of times people would want nothing to do with them. They would shun him. This person's nuts, crazy. What if he kills me? And in the fact that you see through that and you're like, it's a human who made a mistake, who was off his meds, etc. And that's how I have a heart for people like that. People who are in situations and issues because we're all human. We're all one bad mistake away from ending up. When I shared in the short story about pounding somebody into a puddle of blood, I was at a Hollywood party. I'm a Comic-Con celebrity. I'm on a lot of panels and stuff. And the thing with Comic-Con is that there are these different divisions of nerd culture. You could be a horror movie nerd, a wrestling nerd, an anime nerd, a comic book nerd, a furry nerd, or whatever. And I'm not a video game nerd. I don't play video games. I was at a Hollywood party and people were building me up. Oh, Tim's the Comic-Con guy, blah, blah, blah. And this guy started to ask me video game questions. And I said, I'm sorry, buddy, I don't know. And he goes, well, then you're a fraud. You're a fake. You're a fraud. Hey, everybody, this guy's a fraud. He's not a Comic-Con guy. He's never been on a panel. And I saw red. I saw red, pal. I know I seem like a jovial, happy guy, but I saw red, and I had been drinking. And my friend said, "This is all he said." That my brain snapped. He said, "Are you gonna let him to say that about you?" And that was it. That was all the permission I needed. I didn't care what happened. I started punching him, and he fell down. I was punching him on the ground and kicking him. There was blood, and I tell you this for a reason. I got up. There was blood on my knuckles, and I for a, it would make a better story if I was like, and I saw the error of my ways. But no, I didn't. Immediately, I had that surge of, yeah, I'm a caveman. That's what he gets. But then about 15 minutes later, when I calmed down, I was like, what am I doing? This isn't a way to live. What if he had a friend there with a gun or a knife? What if the cops were called and I went to jail? I don't want to live my life like this. I don't want to do, but the point is, like, we all could. We're all one bad mistake away from doing something. So yeah, I put the pieces back together again, but I'm just trying to be a better person than I was yesterday.
Man, it's just one of those things in life. I mean, we were talking about the Kendrick stuff. He made a bad mistake 10 years ago and it cost him 10 years later, right? We're
Yeah.
all None of us are perfect. Yeah, let he without sin cast the first stone. There's a lot of people that like to stand on high horses, and I like to say the cancel culture people have the most skeletons, which is why they're always pointing the finger at anybody else. But like forgiveness and like even forgiving ourselves, right? This is a conversation I had in the episode with Stefan. We were talking about James. Like, I feel like the barrier for a lot of people is self-forgiveness, right? Because there's like the dogmas like to make you feel guilty. Like the church is like, oh, you're a horrible sinner and you're gonna go to hell, and so we're kind of cast into this place where we are guilty. We feel guilty about all the things we did. Oh man. And then this is like what I was talking about earlier, like all this baggage we push away. And part of the process I've been through is just like healing all this old stuff, forgiving myself for my failures, for my shortcomings, for my horrible things that I've done, the ways I've treated people, because now I see everybody like a reflection of me. Everybody, I feel like my personal belief is that we're all one consciousness. We're part of one consciousness that's been separated, right? We've been given amnesia, but we're all part of that one consciousness. And forgiveness is something that we need to embrace, not just because religion said so, but because it's vital in moving forward in society. Like we can't have these walls that we put up and section, holding people out, because eventually nobody's going to be able to move on, right? Like because eventually everyone's skeletons are going to come out and it's be like, oh, we're all terrible. Like you got to cancel everybody, right? Like, um, one of the things, you said that, the girl in Billings was like your last lifeline, and then that fell through, and it's just like, fuck am I gonna do? And my dad had kind of a similar period in his life where he told me he was living with me on my couch because he had lost his apartment and he'd been on drugs, and he told me, he's like, I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live. I'm tired of life. And I told him, Dad, you're still here. You still have something to do in your life. If you didn't have a purpose to fulfill, you'd be gone already. So don't give up. And sure enough, like a few months later, my cousin called me, right? Because my dad and my aunt were twins, but they'd been estranged. When their mom passed away, my dad felt like he got fucked on the estate. So he stopped talking to my aunt for 20 years, right? My cousin hits me up 2 months later. It's like, hey, I want to get them back together for their 60th birthday. They haven't talked in like 20 years. I want to get them together. So I hooked him up with my dad. My dad ended up surprising my aunt in Kansas. He was living in LA at the time. He went out there, took a trip out there, surprised her for their 60th birthday. And he came back from that trip and he's like, I'm gonna move out there. Um, I want to go be close to her. I've lost all this time with her. I want to go and live out there with her and just kind of reconnect. I'm at this stage of my life where I want to kind of right this old wrong, right? So he moves out there, and for the last 2 years of his life, him and his sister were golfing every day, and they had built that bridge back. And this was from a stage where he was like ready to die. He was done with life. And then, before he passed away, he had reconnected with his sister, was doing what he always wanted to do, which was golf every day. And he was just happy. The last time I saw him was for the 2017 eclipse. And he was just in this wonderful state of mind. And, it was unfortunate that he died a couple months later, but like it brought me peace, right? Because he had been at a state, I saw him at his worst where he was ready to fucking die and just take a bunch of meth and just fucking have a heart attack, right? And I just told him, just hold on, Dad, just hold on a little bit longer. There's a purpose here. And then sure enough, the universe gave him that fucking that olive branch of like, yes, this is it. And then he was able to rectify that big wrong of like separating from his twin sister, somebody he shared a fucking womb with, and so that all that to say, like, guys, it's never over if you're still here. If you're still breathing and you're waking up every day, there's still a sun shining out there. It's a beautiful sun. Go out and stand out there in the sunshine, walk with your feet on the grass and feel what it's like to be alive. Like life is a fucking sacred gift. And it can get dark, but in the darkness, like I said earlier, in the darkness you can find the light. So don't ever fucking give up, you guys, ever. Anyway, I think that's a good place to stop, brother. Unbelievable story. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, man. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I feel like we're on the same wavelength in a lot of ways as artists and creators and kind of just living this fringe life and doing what we love to do. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do is don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to step outside of that box that society's put us in and chase something that's beyond you. Chase something that's in your heart because wonderful things can happen when you take a chance. So, Tim, any last final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
We did a long podcast, so I just want to thank anybody who's went through this marathon with us, lasted to the very end. We appreciate that. I'm going to give my links to B so we can throw it up. And anybody wants to reach out and say hi, if you do, let me know that you made it to the end of this thing, and that'll be cool. I've got projects coming up. I'm always doing something. Right now, the most important thing is getting Naked Alien Massacre fully funded. I've got people who are taking shares and pieces of it. So I want to make sure that it's all the way in and that it's I mean, every artist says this, but I want it to be the best thing I've ever done. I want it to combine the technical skills and abilities with nudism. The whole point is that it should be a horror movie that's exciting and fun and thrilling and a good time. And I want people to forget that they're naked. I want them to forget that they're naked. I want them to just lose themselves in the story. And then by the end of it, be like, oh, all right. And they were also naked. That's the point. And I get it that nobody's ever done that before. That's the point. That's why I'm doing it. Who else would do it but this crazy guy? So support that, get behind that. Naked Alien Massacre. Please go to my website, nudisthumorist.com. I also have Spooky Ninja Kitty Media about books and projects. And if you want to write I'm a ghostwriter. I work with celebrity wrestlers, a lot of wrestlers that you would know their name, but I sign a paper that says I won't say that it's me. And so if you want to do a book, if you want to do a movie, if you want to do a TV show, if you want to do a comedy store, if you want to get coached and learn how to make it in this crazy world, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out. And thanks for having me on the podcast. And we're both connected through Grant Offenberger, who's a super swell fella. Grantmepeace.com. Definitely go check that out. And there you go. So next time I see you, you'll be with me at a Naked Marathon, right? Is that I can count on that?
I think so. Yeah, man. I really enjoyed this podcast, getting to know you, man. And like I said, we're on the same wavelength. We're in the same boat of creator, and we're trying to push forward in this crazy fucking creator life, man. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you, dude. And I'm sure we will be doing a lot of things together going forward. And thanks for shouting out Grant. Grant's episode 3, it's season 2. Check it out on YouTube. And check out all of Tim's links below in the description if you want to get in touch with him. He's a fucking awesome dude. Tim, it's been a real pleasure, like I said. And the best thing about talking to strangers is that now that we're done, we're no longer strangers. See you next time.